That was a gun.
Not voting.
If we want to build our nation.
The problem with the Somalians.
Just want to experience something else than a black man.
Move on, move
Be
forward.
like a horse with blinkers on.
Honestly say, I was about to have sex and then I pulled
crap,
up.
but it's
Hi, my name is Leander Cavendele. I'm 20 years old and I study law and economics.
Hi, I'm Kwajo Foriewusu and I am a second year BCom Economics and Law student.
Jordan Helia, second year BSc Chemistry and Maths.
Tembilosi, 19, studying economics and law.
Hi, my name is Nick Corbett. I'm 20 years old and I'm studying economics and law.
I'm Sheni. My name is Nkata Komnisi. I'm a third year medical student, UCT.
Bringing the death penalty back. If we had a referendum tomorrow, most people in South Africa would say that.
Maybe.
No.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
I think maybe a lot of the more vocal people would say no because the vocal people always tend to say no. Say yes, there should be a death penalty. And they might be the ones that are more passionate about it. But I feel like perhaps a lot of people have realized that it's a no-no.
Why would people say, so according to you, say yes to the death penalty?
Because
I think people are just frustrated with the crime rate. But I really don't believe that people would vote for that referendum to bring back the death penalty.
Knowledgeable people, I think that's a very wrong word, but people who have had some sort of education and are aware of, a lot of things would be like, no, it infringes. But go to some mother who lost her son to someone who shot her son accidentally in a gun, whatever. She'll be like, kill them all. And the whole community will feel the same. They'll all be like, you know what, he must die. They don't care about the investigation that goes into it. They don't care that there's a chance that the police might be wrong. They just want somebody to pay for what has happened. And I feel like South Africa has got a lot of, as opposed to a lot of other African countries, and coming from a country that's very not violent, we don't believe in violence. South Africa believes in punishment through violence. You find that the way people express how they feel tends to be very violent. Even protests tend to be very violent here. Like, I find that it's such a violent culture, especially in the townships, that for them, death penalty is just a way of ridding someone that's done wrong.
What warrants
What warrants, yeah.
How do you assign value to an opinion of someone who is perhaps living in, for instance, Claremont, and who says, no, I recognize the right to life, I recognize formal punishment and that sort of thing, and retributive justice and everything, as opposed to someone who's living in the townships, whose opinion matters the most?
Even that person in Claremont, a person in Claremont whose brother was killed yesterday on the street of Main Road in Claremont will also be like, hey, let's bring back death penalty. And I don't think that it's
highly doubtful.
Which crimes would constitute
voting into consideration. They don't say, oh, let's think about why the people in the rural areas vote this way and why these people vote that way or whatever. They just say, okay, voting, this is what it is, this is how you do it. So, I mean, there's no measure of, because he's knowledgeable, he should have 10 more votes than someone who isn't or whatever. It just doesn't work that way. It's your sentiments are your sentiments. I'm not advocating for the death penalty, but I'm just saying that if you go around in terms of the sentiments of people, don't undermine the fact that in a country like this, the people would let go.
You're trying to get to a point where you are reaching an ideal culture. You are looking for the pursuit of truth of an ideal culture. So what would constitute an ideal culture?
And I'm also interested in which crimes would warrant a death penalty, and why are we assuming that in the rural areas people would be pro-death penalty? I don't understand.
But we're not assuming that. And look, we're all on the same side here, because I at least know that I'm on the side of pro-life. I think that everyone has the right to life, and I'm anti-death penalty.
I'm in full agreement with Leander about this violent crime that's appearing, and I really do think that it might be not fully attributable to something like apartheid, but that definitely had an effect on the views of people, because people who are still alive now were in apartheid, and people's children who are still alive now, there's just one generation between apartheid, so therefore it's still so fresh in people. Like, if I'm going to mug you and I'm black and you're white, I'm going to look at you, I'm going to look at your fancy car, and I'm going to think, maybe not even consciously, maybe subconsciously, like, I'm oppressed because of what the white government did to me. And I'm in this bad economic position.
How does that answer? If you're going to mug me, you're black and I'm black, and you're still going to do the same thing as what you did to that white. How does that answer that?
I'm very interested in a study that shows the violent crimes, but who's the perpetrator and who's the victim. Because if there's violent crime in the township where we're on the same, we're both like being victims of apartheid. I mean, we're both under the same system. then what constitutes you hurting me and not just taking what
there
I
could
have?
be a general air of frustration around that. A general air.
That's what I'm saying. It's that frustration thing, that frustration.
you're saying
with
a frustration
the
comes with the
situation.
inequality.
Yes, it's a frustration with the situation.
Oppression of apartheid.
And what if we're both equal? Then what?
No, the thing is,
what's the
you're
explanation
all in
there?
there together because of the white oppression.
So don't oppress me further.
We are all frustrated in the township. We are all frustrated, and the only people to take out your violence is there.
Okay, so we're saying it's apartheid here, right?
I'm not.
Something came.
I'm not.
Okay, we are. That's what happened. Wait, okay. Something that philosophy has taught me actually this semester is just that as soon as you have a theory and you have one counter theory, it sort of disproves the theory. So you said Namibia and you went to apartheid.
Yeah.
You know, the United States went to apartheid. Can we equate it to how we, as South Africans, are just so on another level with the way we commit a crime? And this a question I'm throwing out.
I do accept that. Essentially, one of the things that you did say, and that was also mentioned here, that makes a lot of sense, is that the value system. If it's something that's been passed down in a way that's praising it, you know, people aren't condemning it yet because, you know, I was in the struggle. We dealt with things through violence. You know, you're desensitized to it. So you're not teaching your children about the, you know, violence is bad, blah, blah, blah. So it's still instilled in them. They surround themselves with people who think the same as they do. And then no one's breaking out of that, you know, violent mindset. And there's, you know, the police aren't, you know, people aren't clamping down on it enough here, and I find that there's a lot to do with there's a lot of blame game going around in this country as well. And, you know, there's a lot of violence, but it's the white people's fault. Point. Nobody's actually going there and saying, let's teach our children to change their mindset about violence or whatever. Julius Malema will say, you know, blame Paul Kruger, you know, and then you shift the blame, so nobody's changing anything now, and that's why it's going to continue going on and on and on.
The reality is that we have more crimes in South Africa, less people report crimes, perhaps as other countries, and petty crimes that aren't violent we don't see as significant enough to take to the police. And as we were saying before, is our laws not well implemented? You don't know your rights, so you think, oh, someone just took my wallet, it doesn't matter, I'll have to just get a new wallet. In comparison to, oh my gosh, someone stabbed me, I have to go to the hospital for help, and that's why perhaps it's more reported. Because realistically, I know of a lot of crimes that happen that are very polite, that people even say thank you to and give you a SIM card and say have a great day.
Yeah,
no one complains about that. No one complains about
So
that.
you're saying that perhaps there's more crimes that are not violent than we think?
We have a lot of crimes, but there are a lot of crimes that are not violent. Exactly. And
That's not even that's not an excuse. I mean,
It's just the idea that we see. There's just
but
so much violence.
that's understandable. But like the fact,
but why the same amount of violence? Because we generally have a lot of crime in South Africa. And the question perhaps we should be posing is, why does South Africa have so much crime?
Alcohol is definitely like an aggravating factor for crime. Like that's like scientifically, all the imbalances like
Just
makes you more
explain.
emotional and aggravating, whatever. But why is it that alcohol is so prevalent?
Because the reality, I think we did a bit on alcohol, so I read a few studies, but I don't remember everything in detail. In South Africa, we have a clear history of the dope system, which can say came with colonialism as well as apartheid, oppressing people, forcing them to work for you. And because then you have fetal alcohol syndrome, it creates a culture whereby your children have a behavior where they have a dependency to drink on and on and on, because they're more prone to addiction. And secondly, we also then there were a lot of alcohol laws in apartheid that banned people of color from drinking alcohol. I'm not quite sure of the details, so what I'm saying might not come together well. But at the end of the day, some people started drinking as a form, I don't know, it was a form of your right, fighting back on your rights.
I'm allowed to drink now. I know.
You're allowed to drink, and this is how I can do it. And maybe it does end up being what Leander was saying, although I wasn't completely agreeing with you about apartheid. Because the drinking, the reason we drink so much and the reason it's so much in our culture stems back to what happened before.
And in that sense also, like, if we're going to go back to the apartheid thing, the people didn't really have much to do back then. Like, you know, we couldn't go to nice beaches, we couldn't go here and there. So you just go to your local shebeen and you'll drink. And if that was possible. And I mean, this is a generalization which I can't even back up, but it just makes sense that if there's no other pastime, you know, why not go to shebeen and drink? And then it becomes part of your culture. But it might be a generalization which you can rebut.
I don't know. I feel this is this argument's got a lot of holes, because if you go to Grahamstown, the students there drink themselves to a potpourri and they're not violent in their crimes. So what I'm saying is that there are many countries, there are many countries in the world where there is a lot of dependency to alcohol. But how does that equate to violent crime?
So that was my
Is it
point.
not maybe then drugs and alcohol? Because I mean,
perhaps it's just-
alcohol is very prevalent, but how does that stem to violent crime?
They drink everywhere. People drink everywhere.
Everywhere.
But why is it that here the drunken crimes are more violent than perhaps a Zambian drunken crime?
Maybe
this
because
is pretty
you
much
have a
even
tendency
justified.
towards aggression anyway, then alcohol can only, can only promote that.
The reality now, maybe I'm saying this as someone who's gone to varsity or whatever, there's so many people who are unemployed out there, but the mentality of a lot of people who are unemployed, no, the government must give me money, no, Mandela must give me his money, yo. As you're saying, we're having entitlement, and the reality, we need to start putting in the education system a sense of motivation. If I'm unemployed, and maybe I'm good at, I don't know, law, why not I volunteer somewhere? Gain experience in order to do something. Some of these people that are unemployed, they've got so many talents there. Some of them are good at welding, some of them are good at like making art. Some of them, I think you could easily start a business, but I don't know where it is if we lack motivation. It's not necessarily just entitlement, it's also that we need a step in motivation. Maybe our education is just books that are writing things down, and they don't actually motivate us. There's so many bursaries out there that actually have they have 10 spaces, but they only can fill in 2. Not because people aren't qualified, but because people don't know about them. I'm from Limpopo. We got approached in second year, being told that there's an excess of bursaries that haven't been fulfilled. I mean, I know millions of people who want to do medicine. Millions of people who could have gotten into medicine but didn't even bother applying because, you know what, they didn't know that there's a bursary out there that's there for them.
If you have the opportunity to go to a school, right, that's great for you, but then if you have to go back home, and whilst you're going back home, walk through this violent place or whatever, my point is just that the poverty and everything that surrounds it is still there. And like, I'm very big on the idea of education, but it worries me that just education is the only thing we're focusing on, because then you need poverty upliftment and all those things. They all work together. How can you think that education is going to change your life if you don't have water at home?
I mean, we've all passed matric well, and I think what I'm seeing very prevalent in New Brighton is that people are considering getting a job at, for instance, Akajo or another retail company, and getting a bursary and going to school. And it just seems like, and I think their mentality is like, Tembi, why go through all that struggle to get a bursary and study whereas you can live like piecemeal? You know, where you can just get a basic job. I don't think people value education and the prospects of where it can get you. I think it's like, why go through all that trouble when you can
success stories? Then that's the thing. People need something to they need to see that actually has benefits. I mean, if I see someone rolling up in a BMW with you know, like spiced up wheels and whatever the term is, you know, and he didn't go to university and he didn't go to whatever, and you know, he was a gangster. I want that too. Why? I'm just gonna do the same thing, you know, join the gang and whatever. And you know, so there's the enticement to be a part of that. Plus, there's also the fear of not being a part of that and what that does to you, both from a society point of view and necessarily from a safety point of view. So like, I don't know.
My dream is to be working in a company that gives me the opportunity to travel a lot. I really feel like I have to see the world. That really matters to me. I do want to go back to Zambia eventually one day and develop my country, but it's a hard job, but it's something that I would really love to do.
My dream is to get involved in international politics and international relations, and somehow make it possible for South Africa to be able to get to that level where we are as great a society as we can be, and see how we can do that at least from an international point of view.
Financial stability was the first ideal for me. Second is like Leander, just to travel at some point. And that'll be my dream.
My dream is to finish what I started, so do my master's in economics and travel, but ultimately I want to come back to South Africa and start up social entrepreneurship, really build up this concept, you know, of sustainable businesses, so that we find that many South Africans are very skilled, but we don't use our skills in creating like sustainable businesses. So if we spark that, and if we give hope to people who have the skills, give them the capacity and the motivation and the resources, South Africa is going far.
It's my dream to see myself working in a position where I can give back using my talents, working with people who have other talents. I mean, we've seen here that we all have different opinions and different views and different standpoints and opinions and that sort of thing. And the only good that can come of that is bringing it all together.
Well, my dream is that obviously in a few years' time I'm still alive in one piece, no violent crime. But I may be studying medicine, but I've got so much more that I'd like to do in this world that is not restrained to that. Many other talents I'd like to explore. But what I'd like for it to come out at the end of the day is that I make anyone, in fact, many people realize that we're all more than just civvies. We're all more than just a simple civilian. What you have, you should use to the best. Whatever you do to the best of your ability. Because in this world, we shouldn't have constraints. We should be able to see how much more we can do. That's what I'd like to bring back to this world, my dream.